Yep.
Roger.
You are live.
Okay, I'd like to call the Roseville Airport Commerce Park Commission to order at 6 o'clock. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Porcerelli, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Item number 2 is roll call. Mr. Moran is here. Mr. Rathel?
Here.
Mr. Porcerelli?
Here.
Mr. Tanova?
Here.
Mr. Mans? Mr. Hornby?
Here.
And Mr. Filarski?
Here.
Item number 3 is additions or deletions to the agenda. Anyone have any additions or deletions?
Move approval of the agenda as submitted.
Motion by Mr. Rathel,
Support.
support by Mr. Filarski to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries. Before we move on to our next item, I'd like to welcome our newest board member, Mr. Porcerelli. We appreciate your involvement in the commission and welcome you, and hope we can move a lot of things forward here in our next coming term of office. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Next item is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of November 16th, 2020.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rathel,
Or
support by Mr. Tanova. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. Motion carries. Item number 5 is the financial reports for December 2020, and we don't have any of those, but Mike's going to give us an overview, and then we will put it on the agenda for our next meeting as an action item. So, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yep, I apologize. Those were not in your packet. I did not get them from finance in time to include them. But I can review our normal numbers here. Our budgeted expenditures and revenues is $973,386. Our revenue to year to date is $755,940, which is roughly 77.6% of our way through our budget. The expenditure side of things, year to date is $681,324,000. So right now we're 74,000 to the good. We will have one expense coming up for the roof replacement on the tennis center as part of the insurance claim. We moved that money. The insurance money came in first. So we put that into the revenue side, and we'll take it out of the expense side. So you'll see that kind of pass through there on the cash reserves and stuff. Cash reserves are sitting right at around $620,000. And the past due rent summary I do not have. It wasn't included in that report. So I'll try to send you guys an update on that. There's one tenant that is the past due rent summary has been working down, but there's one tenant in building 63 that we had on a payment plan that we set up kind of at the beginning of COVID and the pandemic, and they've fallen 1 month behind on top of their payment plan. I had a meeting with them last week, and they'd indicated that that would be caught up this week. So that's really the only issue that's on our past due rent summary. And I should have an update for us if that does not come through this week. I believe we just had Mr. Mans join us here. Yep.
Anybody have any questions for Mike?
Do you have fuel farm numbers, Mike?
I do not with that one. I can send those out later to you this week.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our item number 6, which is our manager's report. And the first item under item 6 is Mr. Kantz from the Roseville Land Conservancy Trail update. And Mike, I didn't know if you want to give a little summary of a background and then turn it over to Peter, or you want Peter to do that?
I think we can have Pete start and give a background if you want, and then I can kind of jump in where necessary, if that works.
Okay, Pete, you got the floor.
Okay. Roseville Nature Land Conservancy has been stewarding a portion of the airport property for about the past 25 years, and we refer to it as the Airport Wildlife Refuge. There's a series of benches and signs and observation platforms back there. And in the last 2 years, one of the observation platforms, because of the high water, floated away. So we had a Boy Scout, as part of the Eagle Scout project, come and reseat that platform. But then this last year, it floated away again, and we had to haul it out of the lagoon back there. And we decided, rather than try and put it back in its original place, we find a new location for it. And what we did, we found a new location, approximately, I'd say 100 yards away from the old location, and built a new observation platform there. In doing this, we noticed that a lot of the stuff that was buried there, back there, because that apparently was a disposal area at one time, has been coming to the surface. So I think the high water has eroded the banks, and a lot of what was buried there has now been exposed. Also, some of the stuff apparently has floated up to the surface. So we began collecting all this stuff, and I don't know if you have the pictures or not there.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if I can do this right now.
Okay, we'll show you some pictures.
We do have some pictures that were included in our packet, Pete.
Yeah, he didn't include all of them. He included 3 of them. He left out the good ones.
Those I actually saw. The rest didn't come up.
Yeah. And then Mr. Rathel and I actually walked the area last week. And as it turns out, Mr. Rathel tells me that the original observation platform that was back there, he was actually one of the people that built that. It was built about a little over 20 years ago by volunteers. Well, Mike, are we getting close?
I'm trying. It's telling me if I want to share my screen, I have to close the app, aka the meeting. So obviously I don't want to do that, but let's see here if it'll do it now.
Well,
there we go. You guys here with me?
Okay. This is a picture of what's back there, and you can see it's on the water, it's on the surface, and it's just a conglomeration of trash, basically, that, according to Mr. Rathel, may have been part of the housing that was back there, and they just deposited all their appliances, beds, shelving, and just threw it back there and then tried to cover it up. Well, they didn't do a very good job of covering this up, and a lot of it's right on the surface. So we started picking the stuff that's on the surface up and piling it up over there. And these are some of the piles. We actually have 2 piles back there. These pictures were actually taken back in late September. The piles have grown considerably since then. But it's mostly sheet metal type trash. It's old washing machines, old dryers, old hot water tanks, sheet metal from vehicles, and a lot of tires that came off cars, trucks, and tractors. Some of these tires are huge back there. This is a picture of the platform that we built and the view we have over the airport lagoon. And this is an area that we partially cleaned out already, so there's no trash in front of it. So this is what it can look like if we ever get the whole place cleaned up. Right now there's probably, I'd say probably 2 40-yard dumpsters worth of trash back there. And we've probably cleaned up, I'd say, at least 50% of what we can actually get to. And this is just stuff that's laying on the surface now. It maybe wasn't always laying on the surface. Some of it may have been buried at one time, like say on the shoreline. The shoreline eroded and now exposed some of this stuff. So this is the kind of stuff we've been picking up. And if you go back to those trash piles again, you can see, again, the type of trash that it is. It's mostly metal and rubber. There's some plastic stuff in there, but it's mostly metal and rubber. So what we'd like to do is continue to pick this up, pile it up, and then have the airport dispose of all this stuff. Hopefully we can be done clearing up this area with the surface trash by probably May of this year. And if you guys could then have somebody come in and dispose of it, this area will then be, useful again to the public. We use this area as an extension of the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge, and we use it for our educational programs. May through October, we open it up on Sunday afternoons for the public to go back there and observe the wildlife and take a walk through the trails back there. And like I say, we've been doing this for probably 25 years now. We also use it for educational programs. We'll have educational programs. We'll have a naturalist go back and explain to people, you know, the wildlife that's back there, birds, and we have winter programs and summer programs back there. So we usually have about a half a dozen programs back there each year. So we want to get the place cleaned up as best we can without going overboard. We're just picking up what's on the surface. And like I say, there's probably 40-yard dumpsters full of trash back there. So that's where we're at. Any questions? I mean, if somebody wants to go back there, take a little tour, I'll be more than happy to give them a tour of the area. Some of you have been back there, I'm sure, either during our programs or with part of your airport business.
Pete, I got a couple questions.
Okay.
So what you're looking for from us is just to provide some dumpsters that you would fill up and then we would dump them?
Well, I think we'd actually have to have somebody fill them up. Some of this material is very heavy, and I don't think we'd be able to get it into the dumpster. So it may be, we're piling it up in piles right now. It may require that somebody get back there with a front end loader to actually load it into dumpsters. You know, probably 50% of it we could load ourselves, but some of it's just needed tires, or, you know, some of our tires with steel rims in them, you know, they weigh a couple 100 pounds, some of them. So it's not something you could easily load to a dumpster.
And you're thinking 4 dumpster full?
I'm thinking maybe 2 40-yard dumpsters.
Okay. And
but
Why couldn't we get oh, I'm sorry, Ron.
the other question I had was about how many people visit that area, that observation area?
Well,
summer?
our last program, educational program, was 2 weeks ago, and we had 60 people there. And these are all Rose Hill residents for the most part. And a lot of them actually observed what was back there, and we've had a lot of people volunteer to come back and help us clean it up.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I could start off at least giving an overview from my perspective on that area. There was a small community back there. I don't know if you saw that picture I texted you, Pete, of the barracks and the housing. And I think that was the kind of the dump where they dug it and buried a bunch of stuff. But it's a beautiful area. And what's nice about it, and I encourage everyone to go out there and look at it, there, outside of it's an overall beautiful area, it represents what Peter and his volunteers can do to an area, because half of it's clean and half of it's not. So the area that's cleaned is just beautiful. I mean, it's just gonna, the summertime when it grows in, it's gonna be opened up for more flowers and vegetation coming up. So I felt really proud about that area, Peter, to be honest with you. It's great. And I don't think it's going to take much to do the other half. I say that, I'm not doing it, but I think that this can be done. And I think it's a project that we should get involved with. I would like to get some recognition of doing this as well and being part of, cleaning up of this area, at least from a financial perspective, the airport. But I am 100% in favor of this. I'm also even in favor of expanding some of the things that Peter is asking for. I think that the trails that he's put in need to have wood chips. We need to kind of make that more family, kid friendly, and not just mud, because right now it's just mud trails. And so I think that we should assist, and I don't know if it's going to cost really a lot of money to do it. We go back there one time, let them clean it up, May, June, somewhere in there, whenever they get done, bring in the dumpsters, get Campo or somebody, or Gary or whoever we can get. I don't think it would cost more than $3,000. I mean, that's just my thoughts. So,
Mike, do you have any idea what the cost of a couple dumpsters are?
The dumpsters are not expensive. The 40 yarders, last time we ordered a couple, I know I can get a 20 or 30 yard normally for $300 picked up. Sometimes a scrap steel, they'll waive a little bit of the fee. I think you're probably around $500 for a 40 yard or something, somewhere in there delivered. The more challenging part is getting back into the woods where the piles are and getting them loaded up. That's kind of where the issue is. The dumpsters can line the road out. There's not really an access problem there. They can go across the airport or down the roadway there. It's really going to be picking up that material and getting it in the dumpster. But I would probably put it somewhere between like 3,000 and 5,000, like Mr. Rathel's thinking. The other side note I have is that I am looking to see if I can get confirmation. I do believe we could potentially use brownfield funds to reimburse the cleanup. It depends on, I interpret our brownfield plan as vague. That's what gets approved by the state and what we can and can't spend our brownfield funds on. But I read our plan as that's something that would be able to do as a cleanup. So we may be able to reimburse ourselves from that, from the Brownfield Commission. I'm going to talk to one of the consultants that we do some brownfield work with just to give a once over on the plan and see if that's acceptable. Now we can still do the work, I think, and reimburse ourselves from the brownfield down the road if we need to do that. So that's something to look into. I think, like Peter's saying, the surface stuff I think is necessary. It's good to have the public come down to the airport, showcase, a little bit of our nature side. And they do things like Peter mentioned, owl prowls and things like that. And I think as long as the project kind of doesn't go too far, and when I say, open a can of worms, I don't mean from like an environmental issue. I mean, most of what's back there, like Peter said, is scrap steel or rubber tires. It has been looked at by the Army Corps of Engineers. They have not identified any issues back in that area other than pretty much being used as a dump for things like that. So it's not something that the Army Corps is going to reimburse or will do as a project. So it is pretty much on us or volunteers if we want to clean it up.
Any other questions for Pete? Any other comments?
I've got a question for Mike, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
I didn't know what would be the right time to ask him on this. Mike, in saving some money on this, since it's township property, obviously, why can't we use the DPS, backhoe? I'd hate to have people, Peter and his group are going to clean it up, but they shouldn't be lifting that stuff, into a dumpster and get hurt. I mean,
correct. Yeah, that's what he's looking for is a backhoe. We have a small case loader.
What about the DPS? I mean, I'm not talking about. Yeah, that would save us money, wouldn't it?
That's an option too. I just don't know if their equipment. I'm trying to figure out if a grab claw or something would be quicker, like something like a Campo Brothers.
A different.
Or not, but I'm definitely going to look into it with DPS as well.
Okay, because I've got to meet with Derek, and I just thought if you wanted me to ask him if he had the ability to, if he could help out. I mean, why not? It's township issue, so and save money.
Yep, I'll definitely check into it.
I'm no brownfield expert, but I think in order to use brownfield money, there's got to be an environmental issue, which means we probably would have to have a phase one that would, have to tell us that there's some kind of environmental cleanup that needs to happen. But like I said, I'm no expert in it. So
right.
If you want to look into that, Mike, that's fine.
Okay, we'll do, and I'll report back. Yeah, you're correct on, that's what I wanted clarification from a consultant on, is there's verbiage in there of a dump, but does it have to have something that's considered like a toxic chemical or a non-safe environmental chemical other than like a scrap steel, being used like general rubbish? That's kind of that differentiation that I'd like a professional to confirm.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Rachel.
Yeah, and that's the way I read it too, Ron, but I think that, the spin on this anyway, when we contact them, is that it's left over from the Navy. And whether that matters or not, I'm sure over the years, somebody other than the Navy dumped something there. I'm sure of it. There hasn't been anything dumped there for years and years and years. And I would doubt if anything was dumped in there of any significance, even since the township owned the property in 71 when we took it over. But there was a community back there. There was barracks, there was housing, there was offices, there was, not only the seaplane base, but, there was the photograph that I dug up and sent to Peter, I counted 20 cars in the parking lot back there. So maybe that's the angle, you know, of cleaning it up with brownfield. But on the other hand, you know, we don't want to start doing phase 1 and then phase 2 and then find out that, you know, we're remediating, you know, a 1 acre site going down 15 feet. And
Well, I was going to say, my experience is if you want to go looking for an environmental issue, you can normally find one if you look good. So,
yeah, exactly. So maybe Ron, that's it, right? I mean, maybe you know, Mike does a quick pass by brownfield, and then we just budget $4,000 or, you know, whatever that number is, and just move on from it, you know, and not push that issue.
And a phase 1 and 2 environmental will cost more than the $4,000 just to remove what's there. So I mean, if that's what we have to do to utilize brownfield, obviously that would be a poor investment choice.
Right.
and,
Guys,
when are you expecting that, you know, would you like this cleaned up? I mean, is this a warmer weather activity?
Well, we've been working on it through the winter, but I think in the next couple of months will probably slow down because the ground will actually be frozen. But I'm thinking by the end of May, we should have it cleaned up.
Okay. Well, we can, you know, have Mike look into the cost and bring it back to our next meeting and approve a budget, or we could approve something now and Mike, you can just work within that budget. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mans.
Good afternoon, guys. It may make sense when this ground freezes, that would be the time to do it, to get some, if we do need to get a front end loader in there. I would think that would be the time.
Well, where we have it stacked up, the ground is actually pretty firm. I don't think it'd be a problem with that. We're not going to have it all. I don't know if you were here at the beginning, Chris, but we're not going to have it all cleaned up until May. Right now, we're about 50% done. To get the other 50% done is going to take us a couple months. I mean, this is all manual work, wading through the water and everything else.
It's perfect.
Well, I would move that we approve a not to exceed number.
Are you going to make that motion, John?
Yeah, but the not to exceed number is stopping me from doing it. I don't know if it's 4,000 or 5,000. I don't want to put $5,000 into it. I don't know if we're going to have the maintenance personnel on Grozeal, even through the DPS, to go over there and do that, or what that would cost, I don't know, but we have to look, obviously. But I mean, John, is it not to exceed 4,000?
Commissioner, I think you could do a not to exceed on, you know, it sounds like we could do this in phases too, right? There's 2 piles there now that need to get removed. We could probably do 2 dumpsters, whether it's through DPW or with a contractor, and see what that cost is, and then come back for that second, you know, as the Land Conservancy finishes clearing it out, we can come back again and look at what that cost is. Obviously, if it's, you know, going to cost us $5,000 for 2 dumpsters and get that removal, and then another 5, we have to talk about it. But I think we could probably do it in like a phase 1 and 2.
I think one time, one in there and one out. Just let them get the rest of the stuff. And it would be 4 piles. I can't imagine it going any more than that. 4 piles. They're doing a great job. Everything's piled up relatively close to each other, you know, so they're not, and it's on firm ground, like Peter said. So, somebody's got to help me with the number. I want to make a motion of not to exceed, but I don't know what that number is. So that's it. Somebody's got to help me with that if you're interested.
Mike, what did you say 2 dumpsters would cost?
I do not know, but I think, Mr. Chair, I think somebody else was trying to chime in. I think the dumpsters, I would say for like a 40-yarder, probably be $600 to $600 a piece.
I agree with that, Mike.
600, yep.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tenova.
Yeah, I'm with John here, but seeing that we're not going to be doing anything till the spring anyway, we got time on our side. I think we get with DPS, get their thought on it. maybe get some quotes to get a better idea instead of just keep putting out a number tonight.
Well, the problem with that is if we pass a motion tonight, then Peter and everybody knows that this stuff is going to be leaving, right? So kicking a motion, if we're all in favor of it now, and we're not talking about a large percentage, you know, if it's 4,000 or 5,000, that's not a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal, but it's not a big deal. So that's why I'd like to, you know, get a motion of approval to do this, to not exceed if everyone's in favor of it. So, you know, I'll make a motion that we support this project with the Nature and Land Conservancy not to exceed $4,000. In an event that the costs do rise above that, then they would have to come back. Mike would have to bring the issue back to us before the project is started. So it's not $4,000, we're into it, and then we're only 90% there, so we'd have to do another 1,000. So if all the costs come in higher than $4,000, this has to come back to us. However, that's also based upon the Nature and Land Conservancy in their communications on this project, because Peter's going to market this to the community, and he's going to get more programs, that he includes the airport as a joint kind of sponsor of redoing this to the community.
Absolutely. No problem. We'll put you in our newsletter. We'll have our communications people communicate this to the public that you guys are working with us to clean this area up.
Oh, Pete, you got to save some money for that new deck too.
Yeah. That's a different story altogether.
Why it wasn't Trex, I have no idea, but that's okay.
All right, well, we have a motion by Mr. Rathel. Is there support?
So moved.
Was that Mr. Tanova?
That was Chris.
Mr. Mans? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rathel, supported by Mr. Mans. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say no. Motion carries. Thanks,
Okay.
Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Good job, Pete.
Okay. Mike.
Next item is item 6B, which is the Island Athletics update. Mike, you want to give us an update?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief update here. Some of us were able to attend the grand opening this past Friday of Island Athletics. Coinciding with that, you've seen Governor Whitmer is lifting the rules for gym starting on the 16th, so 3 days ago, for group classes again. So everything following normal COVID protocols put forward by the state, they are able to basically fully open, obviously with the spacing requirements and everything. It was a good, wonderful opening event. I think they had a lot of pickleball players, some tennis ball players. They showcased their new gym, the fully renovated lobby that they've been working very hard on. So I thought it was a very good grand opening event. Definitely for members of the public listening, go check them out. Utilize the space. It's a wonderful community facility. And I spoke with Bobby today, and she mentioned that since between the grand opening event and since the grand opening event to today, they had signed up 40 new members. So it sounds like it was a good PR and opener for them, and hopefully that traction can continue with the public.
I thought it was very well attended, and they're doing a great job of cleaning that up. So I think when they're all done, it'll really be an asset to the community that anybody that's involved in recreation can be proud of. So kudos to them for all the hard work they've done cleaning that up. So.
And I also want to, Mr. Chair, at this point, if I can, make a comment on thanking a couple people on that project.
Sure.
Greg Hornsby and Mike Duker did this deal, and it was incredible. It was long. It was very emotional through all the things that happened at the rec department, moving this building in a direction that, you know, we wanted to take it. through a lot of ups and downs for many years. This project started back almost a year ago. And I just want to say publicly, Greg, you did an amazing job. Mike, it was incredible. And that open house showed the project that you guys put together with this tenant as a tremendous benefit to the community. So thank you guys, and really appreciate it.
Any other comments? For those of you that haven't had a chance to get over there, please do so at your leisure and look at all the improvements, and hopefully once things open up with the governor, we'll see a lot of activity there. So great job for everybody that was involved. We'll move on to item number 6C, which is our Pirates Cove land lease project update. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a very brief update on this. I think after the last meeting, we've completed all of the steam tunnel abatement in the Commerce Park. So we've handed the parcel over to the tenant. They have accepted the closeout report that was done by a licensed contractor. So the lease is initiated. So now it's a 30-year lease for the land that's over there. Brandon, representative for Pirates Cove, has had his first meeting, kind of a pre-meeting with the Planning Commission, and he's starting to work through that. They have submitted some more detailed drawings to them. It looks like right now their next meeting will be in February, and then it has to go on to the board for final approval. And I don't know if Mr. Rathel has any other update other than that for us, because I know he sits on there. But that's the most recent update with that. So I think as things kind of finalize with the Planning Commission and Brandon dials in that development plan, we'll definitely be back with the commission for some input, obviously, because it's going to be on our property for many years to come.
Anybody have any questions for Mike? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 7 is action items. We have none tonight, and we'll move on to item number 8, which is our subcommittee reports. We have none there, and we'll move on.
Mr. Chair, if I could add one update on that. The Airport Advisory Committee and myself met last week on Thursday, so I wasn't sure the outcome of the meeting, but an update for the commission that the chairman of the Airport Advisory Committee has announced that he is stepping down. So Mr. Glovis, who is also a member of the committee, has stepped up and said he is willing to be the chairman, but requested that Chairman Anderson, going outbound, stayed on for 4 to 6 months to kind of help him with that transition. So they're going to have another seat or two to fill as that phase out happens, but Mr. Glovis has indicated that he's willing to step up as chairman for now.
Mike, how many active members do they have on the on that commission or that board, advisory board?
They've got 4, but with Al stepping down, they'll be down to 3. And the charter calls for up to 5.
And do we know, are there any other people involved that might want to be appointed to that board?
Potentially, the committee's going to look at it. One of the issues we've really had is meeting all of the requirements of, we have a lot of, the committee and I about a year ago made a push to try to get some younger aviation energy onto the committee, and we did. But then the member that had joined actually accepted a job that was going to be flying commercially a lot more. So he was unable to continue on after joining for, I think it was only about 4 months on board. But the committee's made a push to do that. The challenge we have is a lot of our younger population are not island residents, which the charter calls for. So that seems to be kind of the limiting factor there. But there's definitely a few potentials, and I'm going to probably meet with the committee again and see what they want to do to kind of start recruiting and filling those seats.
Anyone have any comments for Mike on the advisory board?
As far as that advisory board, wouldn't it make sense to drop that requirement to be an island resident in that case, if it's somebody that is a customer of the airport? I mean, because it's truly a more of a safety-based, commission, and it's, I don't think that really should be a requisite of being on it personally. Maybe that would open up the possibility of, maybe bringing some more, fresh ideas to the table. I don't know.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rathel.
So whether that's a good idea or not, I mean, I have my opinions, but I'll tell you why it's there. And that is that we here, the airport is chartered to be a caring and sensitive neighbor to our residents. And when we put our mission statement together, that talked about how we fit in the community, and all of our decisions have to fit into the community, both through a commerce standpoint, obviously, but what started all this was from an aviation standpoint. And this airport is a little different than other communities. We're surrounded by residential. It acts as a community gathering center with Island Fest and recreation. There's a lot of community activity at our airport. So we're really unique in how many people that are not aviated related come down to our airport with the Memorial Garden. We're going to talk about later the potential lease agreement with a new tenant in east side of Hangar 1, which will have to take up some ramp space. And I guess all I am saying is that Grosio residents have a more or are more sensitive to the needs and requirements of this airport or how it fits in our community. People that live off island don't care. They care about flying, and they care about runways, and they care about costs, and they have this hobby. So we put that requirement in there to make sure that the people that are advising properly based upon what the airport needs as the airport is located in Grosio. So that's why it's there.
I understand that, but I mean, what they're doing is just strictly advising, and what they advise ends up running through us anyhow. And I just think that if we're having such a difficult time getting participation on this board, that maybe we should look at expanding that a little bit, because I really don't think. I mean, I'm looking at it from a point of view of from flying, for safety and, for issues like that. I don't think somebody on the advisory committee is going to be, concerned about Island Fest.
Right. So,
I mean,
so
that's our ballpark.
So when it comes to aviation, Mike Duker, even though he does a great job with all of our tenants and being a landlord, he is first and foremost an airport manager. He's trained in airport safety, runways, all the rules and regulations of FAA, MDOT. We have somebody that's there with aviation. And you just said it, somebody that's on the advisory may not care about anything other than the airport. So, and then you also said something that pilots love to do, and you say they always advise, they're only advised and we can do whatever we want. However, when a group of pilots start getting together and start talking about safety, whether it's safety or not, pilots getting together in masses talking about how they need this or that for safety, who is this group or anyone else to argue about it? Evident of runway 0422, when we got rid of the displaced thresholds and cut down 600 trees on Round Island just to use longer usable runway. So they said they shortened it, but actually they made it longer, and they used safety, 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 safety. And that room through that whole period of that year, I remember very well, were full of pilots from Lincoln Park, Southgate, and not a lot of them from Grosio. So we have every T hangar there full, and we have a number of planes in hangar 1. We have a Grosio resident in hangar 2, and we have a Grosio resident in the Moxville hangar. I can't imagine that you can't find 5 Grosio pilots that want to get involved with this, and that we're in such dire strait that we have to open it up to residents off island to get aviation advice. I don't see it, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I mean, go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
Just not to go either way, this group obviously is going to make that decision on which way or who they get applications from. But one thing, Mike, that you may want to check into, our ordinances run directly from state law. And I don't know if the airport is under the same ordinances in creating commissions, committees, et cetera. But in those ordinances that they must live on gross seal to put their application in. Now, I don't know, again, I'm just learning, but I'm telling you, it might be worth checking into before you debate whether or not you take applications from on or off the island, because if it follows state law, which our ordinances do, it does say that that's why everybody on a commission and gross seal, it goes down from commissions to committees. Now, I don't know if the advisory board is like a committee. Again, you
It's
guys.
a committee.
Oh, it is? Okay. Well, if it is, Mike, you're going to need to check, because it may be a moot point where to go off the island. And I'm not going either way. I don't have even an opinion on that, because I'm just learning.
That's a good point. It's a good point. I didn't even think
It might
about
save
that.
you time. That's all. It just may
Right,
save.
and as a reference, I do know outgoing Chairman Anderson had several conversations with previous Supervisor Brian Loftus about that very matter, and it never went anywhere with that. And I don't know, we were never able to find anything on the state law stuff, and does need to get checked into because it is a committee, not a commission. But it's definitely kind of more of a complex issue. And if we ever, the committee or the commission wanted to make the change, it would have to ultimately get approved by the board, because it's a change of charter if it is legal.
It just may save you time, Mike. That's all.
That's a good point.
Mike, why don't you see if there are other Groseal resident pilots that might be interested in being on the advisory board? And then in the meantime, if you could look into that ordinance and see if you can find out, what's the background on that ordinance.
Will do.
Yeah. Just one last thing. I mean, I think there's actually some other criteria that's not being met by people on that panel right now. So.
Okay. Well, if you could look into that too.
Yeah.
Mr. Filarski, you could maybe let Daryl or Mike know what you're referring to, that would help. Okay. Anything else on that item? Hearing none, we'll move on to our discussion items. And item number 9A is future capital improvements. And Mike had put together a list of a number of things. Do you want to walk through these, Mike?
Sure, I can do that. I was trying to break this down into maybe a multi-session kind of laid out thought process here. And my first one is kind of, let's develop the list, right? We know there's things that have to be done, and then we also kind of have our want list. So maybe let's break it down by airport, Commerce Park, kind of do near, medium, and long-term projects, list them out. And then, there's things I don't have cost estimates on, whether it needs to come from an engineer or I need to call a contractor and get one. My thought process is kind of, let's do our first thing here into a brainstorming session and kind of lay out what we see short, medium, long-term stuff. And then the next meeting or two, we can kind of come back with more budgetary numbers and start to do some financial forecasting over the next few years. I do have some pricing in here or estimates that are already done to give you an idea on a couple of the projects to kind of do some of that financial outlay that we're shooting for. But I think the first key thing would be to put together the list. I'm happy to approach it another way if the commission wants. But I just thought this would be a good to kind of walk through here. So you can see in your pack. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think if after reviewing the list, if anybody has anything that's not on the list, get that to Mike, and then at one of our future meetings, we can start to prioritize these. Obviously, I think the tennis center parking lot resurface is probably on my list anyhow. It's the highest priority item we have. We have a tenant that's putting a bunch of money into that, and I think that's one of the things that we owe that tenant is to improve that parking lot.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Athel.
So I think maybe let's look at this starting with our CARES Act money. of $30,000. Okay, because we have that money right now. So with that, let's spend it. Okay, we have it, and let's spend it. I want to say that the advisory group did come up with kind of a recommendation of doing that. And that was redoing the entrances into the airport, the pilot entrances, and landscape that, and curb and gutter, I think, Mike. And I'm not sure how much that would be. We have roughly $22,000 maybe for both of those going into the Moxel hangar. And then they're approaching hangar 2. And then that goes with Chairman Moran's landscaping plan, so we can do that. And that takes that off the table. And then looking at this list, if everybody comes up with a priority or the things that they want to, they want to do, I would agree with Chairman Moran that the next project would be the tennis center parking lot. We have to redo that. I mean, we just patched it, but to give that building a fighting chance to do that, and then the roof maybe one day, but then painting may come up. So I think those are the two projects that we could plan to start doing in the springtime, would be my recommendation. And it immediately gets rid of the $30,000 that we have sitting here. The others, as far as T-hangers, T-hanger painting, T-hanger, new T-hangers, taxiway alpha, I would like, again, to maybe Daryl, I mean, this is what, you need to take this of what do we need to do in regards to the aviation side, and start tying those into, the 3 to 5 year. The expenditures we're going to have coming up, though, that are on this list is the monies that we may have to put into the east side of the hangar. Well, actually, that is on. No, that's not on this list. No, it is on the list. $150,000. So that's not really a capital improvement project as it is trying to just secure a tenant. And if the tenant puts $600,000, forget about the $900,000 he's talking about, to put $600,000 in there, we would need that $150,000 roughly. So to sum all that up, I think we should do the entrances in the spring, get that approved, get the parking lot approved, and then start looking at these other projects here in the next meeting or two and start to put together a really good roadmap for the next 2 to 5 years.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Filarski.
Okay, I'll just go on with what John's saying. I totally support these entrances being redone as soon as possible. I mean, the entrances to the airport are just awful. And we did run some of these ideas by the Airport Advisory Commission just the other day, and it's pretty much in lockstep with what John is saying here. And then just the other comment was, if we want to do landscaping, let's be really careful about the landscaping and not create more maintenance expenses going forward. Let's put in, let's do it smartly, so the landscaping doesn't get covered in weeds, and we have got to pay somebody to keep it up all the time. So
Sure. Yeah.
let's keep that in mind.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, if I may make one other comment too. I mean, I think that's the right kind of idea. The one debate you might want to have, the hangar 1 entrance is probably in our best shape. The hangar 1 and hangar 2 is the primary entrance for aviation onto the airport every day. That one definitely has to get done. I know we looked at doing, like reconfiguring the geometry of that driveway, tying into our master plan. The advisory committee reviewed that and asked about utilizing the funds for that. So I think it's a really good happy medium to do something for the aviation community, as well as ticking off something that's definitely on our want/need list for the master plan and everything else. You might want to debate the Moxlow hangar entrance is really bad, but it's much more of a commercial entrance, I guess I would call it. I mean, we have semi trucks that do deliveries back into that lot and really beat it up when they're turning in the one spot. It needs to be patched and repaired. We could put the other funds towards hangar 1 and really hit the 2 main driveways, or we could do the 2 that are in the worst condition. But the big expense that does need to be on the radar, without a doubt, in the next 2 years, I would say. I mean, I wouldn't even stretch it to 3, but I think 1 to 2 years is really going to be that barrel roof on the tennis center. We've replaced all the flat roofs at this point. We've done some repairs, and that's going to be a large item. That is kind of a first generation EPDM membrane, or Trocal it's called, roof system. It's at its lifespan. Every winter when the seasons change, we have issues with it. It expands and contracts when you have that much material. As you see up there, moving and contracting, things happen. I've had the roofer out 5 times in the last 3 months as the weather has changed they're very small drips. I'm talking like a 1-foot drip area on a floor, but we're starting to constantly chase things with that big roof. And what we found was along the south side of the roof, as it got colder, the roof contracted, starts pulling up, and it actually opened up a small seam for about 20 to 30 feet on that roof that we ended up patching. So we can continue to do the patching thing, but we're getting into that long in the tooth lifespan on that roof, and that's going to be a big expense that we need to start thinking about, 2, maybe 3 years to stretch it out. But that's definitely something that's going to need to be on the radar as a big expense.
Thanks, Mike. Any other comments on the improvement list?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rakel.
So, this is actually a good conversation and direction, because if we actually are doing a barrel roof repair, and then we have, our build out of the east side of the hangar, also we are getting enough serious inquiries to do phase 2 of building 63. We have a lot of big stuff coming up, and when we look at revenue generation from our investments, certainly the east side of hangar 1 is a huge revenue generator. Building out 63 in phase 2 of another 2 or 4 units is a revenue generator that has proven successful. East side would be successful. The roof on the tennis center it's not going to generate us any more revenue. So I guess with all this master plan, we can come up with projects, but if we don't have a realistic funding method, I'm really glad Joe Porcerelli is our liaison, because Joe's going to get us a bunch of money, and we'll make the township a bunch of money. So you thought you weren't going to do anything on this commission, Joe?
No, I got some news at the end to talk to you about, but thank you for bringing it up.
So I guess we got to put the list together, but we also got to have a realistic funding mechanism of all this. I think you said, Mike, we have $610,000 in our account. We certainly don't want to drain that. It doesn't do us or the township any good if the airport doesn't have any money. So this is real important, guys. I mean, this is why I brought it forth, of hoping to talk about this stuff. We have revenues coming in that we've not had before with our new tenants, the 63 tenants, our storage tenants. If we get this east side done, that's a great tenant. We have the tennis center tenant that we have a good contract with for the next 3 years. But I guess what I'm saying is never in the 25 plus years I've been here has there been so much responsibility and seriousness of the financials and projections of the Commerce Park. Never. We're getting a lot of money and we have a lot of expenses, and everybody's got to take this really, really serious now. And, you know, the reality, and this isn't a joke, you know, this new township board, you know, they're holding people to, you know, higher standards financially, you know, and we just need to make sure we bring that game when we start talking about this stuff. So everybody has to be involved with this, or you know, it's not going to work.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Rathel. Any other comments? If not, Mike, can you start working on maybe some where there's holes as it relates to estimated cost, or upgrade some of the estimated costs so we have a little more realistic, and I'm not saying some of these aren't, but on some of the ones that are unknown, if you could start plugging in some of the holes and updating it, that'd be good.
Sure.
And then between now and our next meeting, if everybody can kind of look through this list and start sort of marking down which ones they think are the highest priorities, and we'll put all those lists together and come up with one that the whole commission can agree is the priorities and what needs to happen first. So a little bit of homework for our next meeting then. Okay, we will move on to our next item, which is a closed session, and it's the east side of Hangar 1 lease negotiations. So I need to entertain a motion to move to a closed session.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Motion by Mr. Mans. Who supported?
Rathel.
Mr. Rathel. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, say no. Motion carries. Mike, do you need to do anything to